Tyra Banks is most well known for her modeling career, where she was the first Black woman to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated for their swimsuit edition. But let's give some background to who Tyra Banks is, or I guess even kind of was before she became a household name. Let me actually preface before I even start. So, Tyra's overall a really private person, and I think even in her childhood, like everything's just been really private within her family too. She was really hard to get information on before like she became famous. So there's very minimal information on her childhood.
You don't really hear, and you never really have heard stories of her out and about.
Yeah, and honestly, she doesn't even really talk about her childhood at all, like ever. I don't think I've heard her really say many things about when she was younger, which is interesting. Tyra Banks was born on December 4th, 1973 in Inglewood, California. Her mother, Carolyn London, was a medical photographer, and her father, Donald Banks, was a computer consultant. Tyra also had a brother named Devin, who was 5 years older than her. Her parents divorced at 6, and following the divorce, Tyra and her brothers lived with her mother on the weekdays and their father on the weekends. She initially attended John Burroughs Middle School, and around the time she was 11, she was facing body shaming issues for being too tall and too skinny. Which I kind of have to pause for a second here because this is so interesting to me because I feel like we live in a culture where it's the exact opposite now. Like you would be praised for being tall
Right.
and skinny. So it's kind of and I mean around this time it was kind of the craze to be skinny, especially as a model. So I'm surprised as around this time she was being shamed.
Yeah, that's very different than what you'd expect.
Right. Tyra later enrolled at Immaculate Heart High School in Los Angeles, where she graduated high school in 1991. Here she is, a full grown adult. We're just starting our lives. 1990 fun. um, After graduating high school, she applied to go to college at Loyola Marymount University, where she wanted to major in film studies. However, Tyra moved to Paris before even getting to start college. So that's just a little quick background on her early childhood. Let's kind of roll into her modeling career and how she became the business mogul that she is today. Tyra began her modeling career at 15. She began trying to find a model agency to sign with, but this proved to be difficult. And this was around 1989, so racism was still extremely present, especially in the modeling industry. I mean, really, any industry at this point. And let me just preface that I'm aware that racism still is, present in, today, currently. But the level of racism in the 80s and 90s is on a different level. People around that time were not afraid to be outright racist. People nowadays kind of keep it closed off or it's in the corners, but like they were just flat out racist in the public for all to see.
Wow.
Um, right? And so for example, this when Tyra was attempting to sign with an agency, she was rejected several times for being either too ethnic or even one agency point out blank said they already had a black woman and didn't want another.
Oh my gosh, that is like flat out admitting to having a token black girl.
It is. Like I said, this is so beyond jarring to me because it's not only happening on like a person to person level, which is already beyond fucked up, but companies are full on saying like we don't want you. We're good. Thanks.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And I think what throws me off so much about it is because obviously I know racism exists and it has existed, but I think it's because 1989 is not that far off from where we are now. To know that this was happening this recently is wild to me.
Right.
So, I mean, there is a silver lining. Tyra does eventually sign with Elite Modeling in 1990, and by 1991, Tyra had booked 25 shows in Paris Fashion Week. Go off, queen.
Wow. Oh
She
my
showed them.
goodness.
So soon after this, Tyra began appearing in a lot of the major magazines covers such as Vogue, Elle, Cosmo, Vanity Fair, 17, and Harper's Bazaar. Tyra is one of the few African American models that was able to achieve the status of supermodel, which, just to give a quick synopsis of the actual definition of what supermodel means, it's a highly paid fashion model who has a worldwide reputation and background in haute couture and commercial modeling. In 1996, she became the first African American woman to appear on the cover of GQ in Sports Illustrated's sought-after swimsuit edition. The following year, Tyra went on to be the first African American woman to be on the cover of Victoria's Secret catalog. A year after securing the Victoria's Secret catalog in 1997, Tyra gained her wings, as they call it, and became one of the original Victoria's Secret angels, where she went on to be one of the featured models in the annual fashion show. Dang, this all happened so fast. 1991 all the way to 1997, and she's a Victoria's Secret angel 6 years later.
Yeah, and I never knew what a supermodel like, what made you a supermodel versus a regular model, so it sounds like it's a lot,
Yeah,
and for her to achieve that in 6 years is kind of wild.
insane. Yeah, I didn't know what it was either. And actually, I was like, you know what? I should put this in here because I think people always think super just means like it's just something you add. Like you're just like, I'm a supermodel. It's like, no, it actually has a definition. And the
Yeah.
term was coined in the 90s. So around this time is when like the term was actually coined. So
Wow. The
so
more you know.
interesting. So which is honestly funny because if you've ever watched America's Next Top Model, the Janice one of the models
Oh,
on there,
yes.
she always says she's the first supermodel from like whenever she was like the 80s or whatever.
I
But
remember that, yeah.
supermodels didn't technically exist. Or maybe it was 80s, 90s. I don't know. So that's up for debate. Anyway,
It always made me weird that she called herself the first supermodel and no one else did.
well, it was funny because somebody finally asked her, they was like, what makes you the first supermodel? She's like, because I say so. So moving on with her hosting career. So she's best known for her two main hosting gigs. I mean, she's hosted a lot in the later 2000s, but for the early 2000s, her main two were Tyra Banks show and America's Next Top Model. So starting with Tyra Banks' show. This was a show that covered a variety of topics such as fashion, lifestyle, makeovers, but also kind of focused on the current issues facing women. So this was a woman's talk show based around women's issues. The Tyra Banks show premiered on September 12th, 2005. It was taped in front of a live audience at CBS in LA. The show ran for 3 seasons and was renewed December of 2007 for 2 additional seasons in syndication. In 2008, the show actually won an Emmy for Outstanding Talk Show in the newly created Informative category. The fourth season began in 2008, but in November of 2008, Warner Brothers announced that the show would move to the daytime block of the CW in September of 2009. The talk show, much like which you'll hear later, much like a lot of things that she did, everything kind of revolved around the CW. It seems like she had a pretty good relationship with that network. The talk show made its debut on the CW as promised in September of 2009, but with a revamped look. The show was now shortened to Tyra, and the show now had a new logo and music to match. The revamped version of the show did not last long, though, and in December of 2009, it was announced that the fifth season would be its last. The final episode aired on May 28th of 2010, and it featured a lineup of guest stars including Miley Cyrus, Rihanna, Michael Rappaport, and LL Cool J. Oh my god, LL Cool J.
What a throwback.
And then, of course, her hosting role as America's Next Top Model. Tyra dipped her toes in reality TV when she created, produced, and hosted. So she wasn't just hosting, she literally created an environment for her to do all of this, which is admirable in itself, even if the show itself ended up being controversial.
She created an empire.
Right? The show was hosted, it was on the UPN, turned to the CW, and it was a competition show with normal girls, aka the girl next door, vying for a spot in the modeling world. The show was an instant hit and became one of the network's highest rated programs for several years. And that's it. That's all I'm giving y'all for now. We'll deep dive later, but that's it for now. I can't give it all away in the first episode. You guys would never listen to me again. But what I will give you guys next is her music career. And I know there's not much to touch on here, guys, but we saw her do it. It did happen. We have to talk about it. So she actually tried to have a music career between from 1998 to 2004. She was trying to become a recording artist, but in 2004 she released her one and only single, Shake Your Body, Body, Move Your Body, Body." And the music video was filmed and featured in an episode of America's Next Top Model as part of a challenge. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the episode again before as I'm doing my deep dive and see what the episode looked like. But what I remember is I think they were dancing and roller skating around a lot, like some kind of dance
Yeah.
competition type thing. I gotta go look
Yeah,
into
I
this
can
again.
definitely see the music video in my head.
right? It's, like, all dark and I can see it, I just can't remember what
Yeah.
happened. So the track was actually written with Grammy-winning songwriter and producer Rodney Jenkins. She pretty much wants to forget it ever happened. I think she understood that there was a difference in stage presence between models and musicians. Like, she respected the J-Los and the Janet Jacksons, and she understood she kinda didn't fit into that role. She just kind of still wanted to be on stage somewhere, and that's kinda what she explained. So, at least she was humble enough to realize it wasn't her space.
Yes, she was self-aware. But I
Very.
feel like to be a 2000s icon, you had to release a single, especially if you couldn't sing. We had Tyra, then we had
Mhm.
Paris, we had Kid, Heidi.
Oh my god, Heidi. You're right. No, you're right. It was I mean, even so, if you keep going into the later 2000s, like, on Bravo, all the housewives now, they love, like, releasing just singles, and they're tone deaf, but it's, like, a thing they think they can do, so
Yes.
I guess it's just a thing. But what she did get right was producing. So she created a company called Bankable Productions. It's an independent film and television production company that was founded by Tyra Banks in 2007. It was actually formerly known as Tai Tai Baby Productions. And I mentioned this just to give a synopsis because if you guys remember from, again, America's Next Top Model, because again, she created, produced, directed, blah, 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 everything America's Next Top Model. So anything you saw on there production wise was her. So at the end of like the first either season or few episodes, you would see the Tai Tai Baby production stuff at the end. And I remember it. And then what I most remember is the bankable productions because that's when at the end there would be a bank vault and it would make the like metal noise of it like closing the door and like shutting, the lock or whatever. And that would be
Mhm.
the end of the episode. And then it would play the na 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 na. Yeah, so that was her production company. And yeah, so some shows that were produced under Bankable Productions, aka Tai Tai Baby Productions, obviously America's Next Top Model, the Tyra Banks Show, Stylista, and True Beauty, and all these shows ran on the CW. So, like I said, her production company, Tyra, and the CW all seem to have a pretty good relationship because she just ran with it. And then she also produced or had a hand in the movie The Click that came out in 2008,
Mm.
which was based on a book series that was similar to like Gossip Girl and all those little preteeny like, you know, what do you call them? Like series
Pretty
of
Little
books.
Liars.
Yeah, exactly. Moving into her acting career, we'll start with her television roles. So, in addition to modeling, Tyra began pursuing an acting career where she had several guest starring roles on multiple popular TV series. She officially made her acting debut with a 7-episode stint in season 4 of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in 1993. She played the role of Jackie, someone who Carlton has a crush on, but later learns that Will has a history with her back in Philly. I don't totally remember watching because I wasn't like a big avid watcher of Fresh Prince, but I remember her being on the show and she was just so like naturally gorgeous. Cause 90s girls, like it was very minimal makeup for the most part, just like very natural gorgeous.
Yes, Hillary and Ashley, like, those girls were
Hmm.
beautiful, and I don't think Tyra filmed with them, but I just remember watching her in her scenes and her just standing out for being so gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, through all her years, Tyra's always been beautiful, but when she was, like, really young around that time, because that would have been when she was only, like, 20 or 21, because 1991, she
Mhm.
was 18, so yeah. And then she also did a guest starring role on my favorite, Gossip Girl. She appeared in
Oh,
2009. She was in season 3, and she plays Ursula, a famous actress who befriends Serena van der Woodsen. She ends up playing a dramatic actress who has a supporting role in a new movie that comes out about the Holocaust, which, when first introduced to Banks, Ursula, in this role, she comes in very dramatically and enraged, throwing clothes around and being as wild as possible. That's kind of like her role in this scene, or I guess this episode, is she's upset about kind of everything with the movie coming out. She's really nervous, and then what ends up happening is her big scene gets cut. So the whole point is for her to kind of be this dramatic, overly emotional actress From what I had seen when she did silly, like, skits on America's Next Top Model, this kind of fit into what I'd seen her do. It was very her. I saw the flair of her come
Yeah.
out when I watched this episode. Hilary Duff is in the episode. They don't interact, but
Oh,
they
it's
are both
that
in the episode.
episode. That episode. We all know that episode.
Yes, yes. I keep telling you about this episode. You're like, "Why don't they interact?" I'm like, "You got me." They really should have done a longer stint with her. I was disappointed. I mean, I get it. Tyra was so busy around this time in 2009, but I wish they could have
Mhm.
gotten her for like maybe even like a 3 episode stint. We got Hillary for like half a season, it felt like. Moving on to her films and movies. Films and movies, that's the same thing. But anyway, so she was in Coyote Ugly. One of, I mean, probably her, I don't know. They're both pretty well known. A very well known film from 2000. Tyra plays Zoe, who is a bartender that works at Coyote Ugly, where the main character, Violet, begins to work and learns to navigate her new job and friends. We all know Coyote Ugly, but she's not the main character.
Yeah, and honestly, I hadn't seen that until I was older. I wasn't
Yeah.
allowed for whatever reasons, but I remember hitting play, expecting her to have a bigger role, and I was pretty disappointed in her having like 3 lines.
Yeah, see that's depressing. So, yeah, I mean it's nice that she's there, but that's definitely not her biggest film, I would say.
Right.
I would personally say, but I mean that's me being biased, would be Life Size.
Oh, yes.
So I'll give a quick rundown of the movie synopsis for those who have never seen it. The movie's plot centers around a young girl named Casey Stewart, played by a young Lindsay Lohan, who is grieving the loss of her mother. Casey accidentally brings her Eve doll, played by Tyra Banks, to life when she performs a magic spell in effort to ease her loneliness and grief. The Eve doll is a fashion doll who comes to life and is as a life-size live woman, and it's the and she is the embodiment of Casey's idealized version of her deceased mother. Eve, Tyra Banks, helps Casey navigate the challenges of growing up and provides emotional support and guidance. Through their interactions, Casey learns the importance of life lessons and gains self confidence. The film explores themes of loss, friendship, and personal growth while maintaining a light and comedic tone. I mean, I remember this movie overall, and it really, yeah, I would say it was definitely light, but there were some really sad moments too, where I was like, oh, it
Yeah,
really
it's
like
definitely got a
tugged.
darker side, but I don't know. The magic kind of
Right?
gives it the happiness too. But it touches on dark topics.
Totally. I think this was like as kids, this was probably one of our first like liaisons into like preteen stuff with like a little bit more
Mhm.
like substance to it. But I will say my favorite core memory of this movie is when Tyra Banks is sitting at the computer in her little pink tweed outfit and she's just typing and it's just straight gibberish and the boss walks by
Yes.
and she's just smiling like ah. And he's like, "What are you doing?"
That is a hilarious part. There's so many iconic parts of that movie.
It's so good. I wish they would still play it on like Freeform, but I haven't seen it play. You can't find it anywhere either. And I also wanted to, so I wanted to touch on her personal life and all that, but like I had stated previously, like her early childhood was hard to find stuff on. If that was hard to find, I mean, she got better over the years at hiding her
Right.
adult life. So I mean, I felt like she was pretty open with us in the early 2000s, but what we saw was her kind of get mocked. So what happened was the paparazzi kind of just fucked around and like her weight would fluctuate a lot as she got older and they kind of would just abuse her in the media. She's fat, she's skinny, she's not right. Like, it was she couldn't do anything right. And I find this completely ironic and really annoying and frustrating because she had built her career off of being a curvy woman.
It just seems like she went from being body shamed for being tall and skinny, and now she's being body shamed for being curvy. There's no win.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, how can she win when like neither way is right? So yeah, overall there isn't much to find about her life in the current or recent years, but I did see, for those who didn't know or maybe did know, Tyra welcomed a son in 2016, York Banks Asla, with her then partner Eric Asla. They're since not together anymore, but, they welcomed him via
Mm.
surrogacy due to Banks having fertility issues and struggling with IVF in the past, which is sad. What's even sadder is Tyra was forced, and I say forced lightly, but not so lightly, to post pictures of her son on Instagram or online in general because paparazzi obtained pictures of her son's face or just her son in general and they were fixing to post them, but she wanted to beat them to the punch. So she was forced to post her kid online before some sick ass
Mm.
stranger did. All right, and that about wraps it up for Tyra Banks. I wanted to touch on her as like my first topic because I think she's definitely iconic like I said when you think of the 2000s. But I also wanted to tease that I definitely do have the America's Next Top Model episode. It's in the works, guys. So I didn't just throw it out there for nothing. It's coming. I felt like it would be a disservice to Tyra and the show if I didn't give encompassment of Tyra herself and then the show because Tyra is the show. We know that, but she needs her separate moment too.
Right. She's more than that show.
Exactly.